The house smelled faintly of roasted chicken and cinnamon from the pie cooling on the counter. I had been to these dinners countless times. I knew the rhythms: my brother at the head of the table, my niece fidgeting in her seat, my sister smiling nervously at her husband's jokes. I had also been the quiet scaffolding of their lives, paying bills, covering shortfalls, keeping things stable. It had always felt like part of who I was in the family. That night everything shifted in a single, careless comment. My niece held up the purse I had bought her for her birthday, all glossy leather and gold hardware, and snorted. "You're only invited because you pay for everything," she said, eyes shining with amusement. The room laughed. Not the nervous, polite laughter of someone trying to cover discomfort, real laughter. Her father chuckled, patting her shoulder. "Well, he knows his role," he added, voice easy, approving. I sipped my drink. Nothing more. No sharp words, no raised voice. I let the moment sit, the echo of entitlement filling the air like smoke in a room. I felt a familiar weight, one I had carried silently for years, the quiet cost of being everyone's safety net. After dinner, I returned home alone. The house was empty except for the hum of the refrigerator. I sat at the kitchen counter and opened my laptop. One by one, I reviewed every recurring payment I had set up. The mortgage I covered when their account fell short, the extra tuition transfers, the car insurance, the streaming subscriptions, the incidental, just in case, funds I had authorized. The scope was staggering, and for the first time, I saw it clearly, not as generosity, but as invisible labor everyone had assumed was my permanent role. I worked silently through the night. Every auto payment was canceled, every linked account was closed. Notifications went out confirming that future payments would require explicit, written requests, and approvals would no longer be automatic. Authority was no longer my invisible gesture, it was now documented, formal, undeniable. Before leaving town for a work trip the next morning, I placed a single envelope on the kitchen table. Neat. White, the kind of envelope that commands attention without fanfare. Inside was a brief letter, a summary of all past contributions, the confirmation of account closures, and a clear statement that no automatic support would continue. No blame, no insult, just boundaries drawn with clarity. By the time their morning began, panic had taken hold. The mortgage notification had bounced, the tuition reminder pinged their phones. Their entitlement collided with consequences in a way they had never anticipated. Phone calls flooded in, messages followed. My brother's voice shook, not with anger but with confusion. "Why?" he asked. "My niece sent a text. I don't get it." I didn't answer. Not immediately. I let the room exist in its own reflection, the silence now a mirror for years of assumption and expectation. The consequences were immediate and visible. No shouting. No public embarrassment. Just the procedural collapse of dependence, the unvarnished reality that support was no longer invisible. Later that day, I reached out. Not to restore everything, but to separate the roles. I would continue funding my niece's education directly as an individual commitment to her. But household expenses were no longer my responsibility. The distinction was sharp, uncomfortable, but necessary. I left the city, driving in quiet reflection. For years, I had believed that generosity required invisibility, that love meant absorbing the burdens of others silently. That night, I realized that generosity without boundaries is indistinguishable from enabling entitlement. There was no celebration when the shift occurred, no dramatic confrontation. Only the quiet, undeniable cost of finally saying, "Enough," and stepping back. And in the end, the room had changed. Not because of anger, but because reality had finally been allowed to speak.